All right, by leaving poor Cartwright behind, Nathan Hale and his clear and complex, characterization has to venture into the tower and to defeat also the angels.
I really have to wonder, if they really intended Cartwright to die, why not give him a more clear death scene rather than just him clearly still being alive, albeit
It's
in
still
pain?
it's very cliche of the action movies, from the 80s till the time this was made. Nothing particularly, new or complex. So I kind of understand what they were trying to do.
Well, and again, I guess it works out since this allowed them to have him be alive.
hmm Also, how did a bunch of soldiers manage to get inside here
Yeah,
already?
like I thought nobody else was able to get in. What the heck, guys? You should.
But now it's here that we actually get the last major weapon of the game, an upgrade, the Bullseye Mark II, an upgraded version of the Chimeran service rifle. It has the same functionality as standard model, but uses a supercharged power cell to develop significantly more firepower. Slugs fired from the Mark IIs create massive permanent cavitation in victims. Those not killed outright receive wounds which do not rarely close. Fatal blood loss is inevitable without immediate medical attention. It is for this reason the Mark II is referred to simply as quote-unquote Blue Death. The Bullseye Mark II has only been observed in use by advanced hybrids engaging in base defense. Essentially, the game gives you as a freebie essentially an upgrade to the Bullseye because it's more powerful and it's blue instead of red. Fancy. Jesus.
Hello there, beautiful.
You have a set of gums or something.
Do you come here often?
So I know what you're thinking. Wow, cool! The game is giving me a new tool. That means it's making me purposely overpowered for the final level, right? Yes and no. As in, you technically are much more powerful, but possibly also in order to have enemies drop ammo for you, they start actually having the usual clown car squad of enemies now carrying this thing, meaning they are also more deadly towards you.
Oh, I'm getting
So-
Knack flashbacks.
It's basically the war escalating, but yeah, it kind of is a bit like Mac. It's just the fact that, mind you, it's not really a thing of the weapon has mostly just drawback rather than just an advantage. It's more of a case that it seems like the game immediately auto balances, with the kind of scale that you have. But like again, I get it. The major reason is because they kind of needed to have a good excuse to have the enemy drop this weapon, so you can get ammo for that. And you cannot just use the normal bullseye. It's just that, it's making things still hard.
Okay, here's how I would have done things. Give players at least some time to feel overpowered with the gun before balancing stuff out. Maybe have a few crates with some weapon for the ammo.
That's the weird thing. In all those games, even FPSs, usually if they give you a new tool, they usually give you a situation like a set piece or, a room for you to actually experiment with it.
Yeah.
I guess it's more okay. Remember, I guess it's a case where the game was supposed to still finally come out, and this being the last set of levels, they probably just wanted to actually push the game out. Not necessarily to the say that this was rushed, but maybe not implementing all of the stuff they would have wanted still.
I was actually gonna ask, herky jerk development of the game based off of just how it is in general aside, do any aspects of this game feel like they were blatantly rushed to you?
Not really. As in, the length of the story seems fair enough to me. Again, the only major thing we noticed was the thing that got acknowledged in the interviews, as in the fact that. Oh, let me explain quickly. So now you're fighting an angel type. So I know what you're thinking. What kind of dastardly tricks has he up his sleeve? He mostly shoots poison darts at you, which are very deadly. So again, that also means that he's kind of hard to take down. Surprisingly, no. Like combining the Bullseye 2 and the rocket launcher, you can relatively put him down without having too much of an effort. Like so.
In spite of angels supposedly supposed to be...
Again, I guess to be fair, they're trying to basically imply with this that since they're command units and they telepathically coordinate, the Chimera, they themselves are not, super armored or super made for combat, like stuff like the Widowmaker. But let's check them out while we're at it. First, the advanced hybrids, which are the fanatical defenders of the Chimeran towers. Every aspect of their physiology has been tuned to grant an extreme level of performance. They must be outfitted with specialized cooling units to ensure their core body temperature doesn't climb uncontrollably during the heat of combat. Incredibly tough, advanced hybrids are capable of tearing apart any intruders they encounter. Gotta love the expression.
Yes.
And finally, the Angel. Angels have only recently been confirmed. They are believed to be the most advanced Chimeran strain currently operating in Britain. Angels are usually found near Chimeran strongholds, though there have been some battlefield sightings. Initial observations indicate angels exert a commanding influence over other Chimeran strains. The extent of this connection is unclear. As leadership units, angels don't directly participate in combat. The extent of their offensive capabilities is not known. Again, this is supposed to be in universe, meaning that of course the British intelligence doesn't know much, about them. So it's up to you to figure out stuff like that.
Interesting they chose to call them angels.
It's an angel. But basically, to finish what you were asking, Jova, again, it's just the fact that maybe the initial level, which was supposed to power in the tutorial, probably, made way more sense, the fact that, something was supposed to be there, especially because it would have been following the trend that Half-Life started, the idea of, having the game start in a more quiet kind of place that serves almost just as a tutorial, and then shit hits the fan later on, kind of been also like what Bioshock Infinite tried to do, which, Ken Levine turning an immersive sim into a military-esque shooter in terms of gameplay is another can of worms for another time.
Yeah. Oh, Bioshock. I mean, on the one hand, I still...
Oh, but don't you see, Joe, this time he's definitely doing something different, even though it still looks the same.
Yeah, speaking of which, Bioshock 4 is supposedly still a thing in development.
Yeah, but it's not handled by him. Again, Ken Levine is doing instead that Asteroid game that we have seen a bunch of trailers from instead of plays, which doesn't look too bad. But again, they're still trying to do the same kind of aesthetics and possibly the same kind of gameplay, which is once again trying to capture what System Shock 2 was and not being really there. Mostly just a neutered down version of that.
I like Ken Levine, but interestingly enough, nowadays the general consensus sees Bioshock 2 as a much better game than Infinite, which... Yeah, Infinite had Ken Levine's involvement, 2 didn't. Now, I'm not saying that Levine was the problem, but part of me does really wonder.
It basically stands to the franchise, kind of like what Peter Molyneux stood for Fable. Good aspects of the game were present in spite of these people's presence.
I honestly do wonder what Bioshock 4 is going to do after Infinite pretty much took us to the multiverse.
I mean, I guess alternate versions of places or something. Again, with enough creativity, you can do anything, Joe. I wouldn't worry too much on that aspect.
Yeah, that is true. Be interesting for...
But don't you see, I'm trying to do my best Peter Molyneux. But don't you see, Teo? You can plant the acorn, and it will grow into a tree. And that somehow, for some reason, makes the game better. For
reference, this is the same person that considers, the two different spectrums of moral choice in a situation like helping seeing an homeless person being bullied, in the street. The good choice being simply just to scare the bully away and do nothing else. The bad choice, the evil choice, beating the everlasting shit out of the homeless person. I think there was a bit of an imbalance in terms of how extremes were handled, but that's just my guess.
It'd be like if your choice was, do I use the super laser to get rid of this person who's done nothing but evil things and is about to do even more? Or to just blow up the whole planet, and that'll definitely get rid of it.
Also, for reference, sacrifice the same game, mind you, sacrificing the life of a person that you married to a dark god in order to restore your youth technically gives you less evil point compared to the ones that you get if you want to divorce the person. You figure it out.
Is this... Okay, what game was it?
The first Fable.
Are you okay? Am I? Is this? Was the writer of that one of those people that thinks that the very concept of divorce is like a sin or something?
Oh,
Okay, you have to possible, but you have to tell me because Lionhead Studios, if I remember correctly, was a British studio.
Yeah, I don't know myself. I'm only asking. But
Is
I
it
mean,
part of because it's as roots in part of your your country's culture or something? With
no. Typically, round here, divorce is just something that's usually met with a yeah, whatever, do what you want, it's your life kind of reaction.
Okay. There we go. But yeah, you noticed also via the radio communication that the British are still fighting outside. Again, speaking of the British, they are still fighting outside. So don't think they're just gonna be completely absent and Hale has to save the day entirely on his own, even though he's still doing most of the lifting, basically. Also, once again, the music has become this ambiental stuff. Like he said, it works for what he wants to do, but man, this score is so unmemorable.
it doesn't help that.
The funniest thing about all of this is that okay, Resistance 2 is fine on a scoring zone. It's taking a bit better, but doesn't still provide a recognizable theme. Resistance 3 actually has a good soundtrack, which was the one that was used for a remix in PlayStation Stars Battle Royale. But for the life of me, I cannot actually, having just replayed that game, I cannot understand, recognize for the life of me from where that specific track is supposed to be in the game.
Ouch.
Because maybe it was in the credits, and I did not pay attention because it's really a good track. I don't remember what specifically it's called, but it's just not present as far as I know.
My personal take with this soundtrack so far is that it feels like they couldn't decide if they wanted to go for ambient or more action-packed.
And like I said, this is the same composer of the most of Ratchet & Clank games, and he said I have to raise an eyebrow about that because despite trying overall, like as Pedro mentioned, as it was custom for platformers around that era, their score were not memorable again. Kind of like I said, I think I hinted this by the time we're recording this, we're also slowly recording the first Ratchet & Clank, but in terms of composing, it generally did felt like a step down from Stuart Copeland from the Spyro games.
Well, like I said when we did bring that up earlier, it was specifically a Sony first-party platformer.
It's weird. Okay, I guess I wouldn't consider that a platform more of an hack and slash because, for contrast, the early God of War titles still have a very kick-ass score.
Well, yeah, but the God of War games are at least the early ones are hack and slash games.
There is some platforming, but yes, they're mostly hack and slash.
When I think Sony platformers, of course, I think Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, the Trinity on the PS2.
Yeah. I wonder
because those were the games that had the more ambient, atmospheric music to them compared to what we see in Nintendo and Rare's platformers. Because if you take a look at Super Mario Sunshine still has the same kind of melodic-driven scores that you typically associate with the Mario games. Same thing with hell, even Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. For as bad as that game is, Grant Kirkhope's music
still gets it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But Sony's first-party platformers will always try. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind that necessarily because you want to do something of your own instead of just ripping off what the other people did before you. Obviously, you want to have your own identity. I understand that. The problem is that while I appreciate the attempt, at the end of the day, it does make for some notably not that memorable soundtracks for platforms.
And again, it's kind of a shame because a good soundtrack can actually give a game an identity, even if other aspects are relatively weak. Like Andrea.
Part of me wonders if it's obvious that they were in that mentality by the 7th gen. But I wonder if even as early as 6th gen, Sony were trying to make their games essentially playable movies in terms of the atmosphere, the production values, and most
If so,
notably the
Jova,
soundtracks.
if Joe, that doesn't really excuse much of a quality Jova still, it's just a matter of what kind of thought process, which I agree. But the point here is that it's not only that, but the fact that, mostly because they're ambient in this case, they also don't seem to actually have anything memorable to them, which is not an automatic guarantee. The two are not necessarily mutually exclusive, that's what I mean.
That is true.
It's
My
not even one of the. I'm sorry, go on.
My theory is like in trying to make them more movie-like, they focused on, okay, we're specifically just making music for a scene, but it can't be too video gamey. Yeah, I know video gamey is a blanket term, but you do get a sense when something feels like it's higher or more energetic all across the board. Again, befitting of a video game to try and keep the player pumped. But here now we do get some ambient stuff. Now, to be fair, even as though it's the PlayStation era, we did get some ambient tunes, like in Crash Bandicoot. The difference is that even the ambient tunes still had video game energy to them, whereas here, it feels like a lot of it can just be stuff you listen to heck, even potentially relax.
We were losing the battle outside the tower. The few tanks that remained would soon be overwhelmed by the...
Basically, the narration said, hurry the fuck up, Nathan.
Our only hope lay with the few soldiers who had managed to infiltrate the
I
tower.
thought it was just Hale,
It was up
though.
to
Now
them to
it's a
find
few
way to destroy it
soldiers.
from the inside.
Sure, why not?
That's basically the game's excuse to give you potential reinforcement later on. Anyway, again, to compare this instead to just the genre, we noticed also, for example, in Gears, but also Halo particularly did manage to have a very elevated soundtrack for the genre. So
That it did.
this really did not
I
an
actually
excuse.
like the Halo. I actually really like the Halo.
I don't remember what the name of the composer actually was, but again, someone relatively noteworthy for it.
Although-
And again,
although-
I'm still waiting for another Gears game that actually has a soundtrack on the level of Gears 2.
Also, just to
That's
note
not what I
though,
was going for. Gone, Jova.
to note, I was talking about Sony though. Halo and Gears, that's Microsoft's territory. Like, one thing I'll give Microsoft credit, when they entered the console market, they were gung-ho for the most part on appealing to gamers the best that they could. So, like, whereas Sony may have been trying to move towards making their games more like movies, Microsoft were all in on games. When they had their heads on right in regards to it. This would only escalate with the 360 era in that regard, and how they really pumped stuff up a bunch. It was, ironically, in the Xbox One era where Microsoft suddenly got the mentality, well, that stuff that's been working for us, let's not do that anymore. Instead, let's focus less on the games and more on the movies, which also apply to their games. Hell, one of their games was literally tied to a TV show.
Yeah, Quantum Break. Remember, again, that was the general mentality as it was supposed to be the launch of the Xbox One, which I guess in hindsight, maybe if it was something that was unveiled more recently, it probably would have worked out better, I suppose. That's what 10 years do to you, I guess. But that's basically just speculations of that. But that also had an impact of other stuff along the line, like the Phantom Dust sequel, which turned into a remake that wasn't even good.
As for you were talking about the whole movie thing, but that's the thing. Well, at least when it comes to Naughty Dog specifically, because you take a look at the Jack and Daxter series, which had the more atmospheric style to its music. But when you go into the Uncharted games, they have that Indiana Jones-esque type of adventurous feel, which of course fits perfectly. But I will argue the music in those games does have more of the pumpy video gamey aspect to it compared to Jack and Daxter. So
It does.
Kind of, flip-flopped a bit between both.
Yeah. I mean, the Greg Edmonson stuff in the first three games was,
Yeah.
Let me point out,
was good.
I'm not saying that every aspect of Sony moved towards making their games more like movies, although, you know, the production values of Uncharted did lend to that. I'm talking more so about Sony's overall mentality and how that did affect not only franchises that they had worked on, but some of the companies working under them on that stuff.
That actually reminds me of something else. It's a bit unrelated, slightly unrelated, but it's mostly something that I'm curious. Just to know, because maybe you guys mentioned it when you commented on that. Aside from, of course, what everyone remembers, the guitar stuff. Does The Last of Us have any particularly memorable, score, or it does also ambient?
I will argue that Last of Us Part 1 in particular is an excellent example of how you do a very down-to-earth ambient score, because there's a lot of, for example, one in particular melody that I like, aside from the main theme that plays in the title screen, is the theme that plays when Ellie and Joel finally arrive at the city.
When they see the giraffe.
And they well, that too, but that brief moment when they're just enjoying the view, and there's a quiet moment where the game allows you to just take in the thing, and the music playing there.
He does the music for the TV show as well, doesn't he, Gustavo?
Yeah, Gustavo, remember, it's an Argentinian composer too, basically.
Okay.
Gustavo does a really good job in throwing in some really good, memorable tunes while still keeping the tone down. It's very somber, and let me put it this way, Theo, in the way that you understand. It's a very meditative soundtrack.
Sure.
That encourages you to just take in and meditate on what's around you, basically.
As for my take, it's a fine soundtrack. I'll admit, some tracks do go in one ear, out the other with me. Some stand out better than others, but I will say it never did make me feel bored, which I feel separates that from this game, because I do feel like there is a point where sometimes ambient music can get to the point where it is just boring, and I do sadly feel that some of these tracks fall into that.
I think this game falls into. What the fuck?
Sonic 3, the Saturn version of Sonic 3D Flicky's Island does ambient music well.
Yeah, that's Sonic, and Sonic on the Mega Drive, those chips. I have yet to hear.
I said Saturn, but yeah.
Honestly, even Sonic music at its worst, I'd argue, don't miss.
Hey, look at that! The British have found us. So you're telling me that I could just snuck a ride and get to this point on my own? Okay, I guess there might have been that as a...
Jeremy, you're forgetting Sonic Genesis exists.
It's not boring. It's terrible, but not boring.
Okay, that's a good one as well, but I was gonna say Sonic Chronicles.
Again, not boring. God awful, but not boring.
I guess, but I have to clean my ears every time I hear it. Though.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. I think it's fair to compare them to both RPGs. The World Ends of View on the DS has a better soundtrack than Sonic Chronicles.
No, duh!
You can also bring out the Layton and the Ace Attorney games, which also make masterful use of
and
DS.
Pokemon Gen 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, how about this? No, you can, or hell, look at Ni no Kuni on the DS, which has Joe Hisaishi's music fully uncompressed. That's still by far the best musical achievement on the DS for me. But anyway,
well, they had to make an entirely new cartridge for it, but still,
it was worth it.
Gotta appreciate the effort, right? Joe, I just found one.
What?
The soundtrack for Rise of Lyric. If there's one Sonic soundtrack that bores me to tears, it's Rise of Lyrics.
I guess I can remember the title screen, but only because for how much it was memed to death and nothing more.
I remember
because I struggle. I can kind of still. I remember the main theme that plays in the title screen, like Theo said, but even then I don't find the melody particularly great. But outside of that, I struggle to remember a single track from that game that is not that one or the lyric boss battle theme.
I guess
it's just random orchestral sounds with no direction.
I guess I'll grant you it's not as memorable. I'm not sure I'd say it was boring, since I do feel like, okay, while they go for orchestral movie background pieces, they at least do sound, I feel, energetic enough for each one. But I will grant you that, no, Boom Rise of Lyric is plagued with a very unmemorable score or soundtrack, if anything. Heck, I bet you more people remember the Skrillex trailer music than they do most themes in that game.
They had
soundtrack.
what?
You can
Oh, right! Yeah, basically, Tio, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was first introduced with a Skrillex song.
Yeah, on the first trailer.
Why?
Well, to be
It
fair,
looked and sounded cool, admittedly.
Was that
then.
another one of those, oh, we need to make nerd shit look cool initiative?
Okay. I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. To be fair, if there's one gaming franchise that makes sense to have Skrillex in it, it's Sonic, because Sonic has always been about.
I think Just Set Radio would have fit more.
I feel that Skrillex worked out.
I think you're forgetting that Sonic has always been very about bringing in different artists to bring in various different genres of music all across its history. So it's a very
Alright, so let me explain this. Final level time, and instead of a final boss, we have to kill a bunch of lice.
No,
Yeah.
come on. I swear to God, what is it with FPS games that think, oh, you don't want a proper boss fight?
Okay, again, this probably I should have seen it coming, because again, when it comes to boss fights, like I think I mentioned this in the past, but when it comes to boss fight, Insomniac is literally just a coin toss. You either get something that is pleasant or something, or you get absolute dog shit.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Sparrow one's final boss, we can call it that.
Go on, Pedro. I can elaborate more on later.
No. I just wanted to finish my point, because when you think, because Sonic over the course of it has had so many different genres of music from all over the music industry.
Yeah.
At this point, pretty much anything is fair game to put in a Sonic game. We've had rap, we've had hip hop, we've had grunge, we've had
classical music.
Have we even had a single genre of music that has not been in a Sonic game at this point? I'm pretty sure we've covered all of them.
No, I don't think so.
So at this point, everything is fair game as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's no such thing as a music genre that hasn't been in a Sonic game.
Which honestly, that's one thing I love about the Bluebird, just how adaptable he is with music.
Like, so Skrillex being in Sonic game, honestly, how is that any different from getting any other band of the same genre? Honestly?
I mean, the most recent
not so much
song.
a band, but not much of a band, but more brand. This is like this is like if you know how for MKX they had a trailer using System of a Down music instead. It's kind of like if instead we use that for Mario Odyssey, still a bit of a whiplash in terms of present, especially because in the final product the music is nothing like it was presented in the trailer.
That I can understand. Like, if they use a song in the trailer that doesn't reflect how the music of the game is, that I can agree with. But Sonic never really does that. And not to mention, I will argue that your argument is a bit flawed in the sense that there's a big difference between what people expect from the music of a Mario game and people expect from the music of a Sonic game.
Well, that is true, but that did not stop people from switching from orchestra to jazz, passing from Galaxy to 3D World.
Oh yeah.
I will say.
Alright, here's how this shit works. After using that lever, the compartment of this generator will start dropping one by one, destroy that, and survive until that point. It's so mundane.
So this is the equivalent of the Mook Rush boss fights from Sonic Heroes. What the hell?
It's so lame still, but go on, Pedro.
No, see the thing, but just to bring back to the earlier point. It boils down to this, folks. And you can see evidence of this. It doesn't even the GBA, even with something as crap as the GBA sound hardware, you can make a good soundtrack if you know what the fuck you're doing, like Sonic Advance 2 soundtrack.
Or hell, Shantae
sounds
courtesy of Jake Kaufman.
Yeah, exactly. It boils down to how good of a composer you are, and people like Tomoto Nishihara and Noriyuki Wadere. And
I've heard a few soundtracks from on the Game Boy Color from Alistair Brimble. He managed to make a few Game Boy Color soundtracks that came from a Commodore 64.
The Game Boy Color is basically a handheld NES, and the NES has a shit ton of iconic soundtracks, so that's not even a surprise to begin with. No, it boils down to people who know what they're doing and can push the hardware to the best that it can be. Because people saying, oh, Sonic Chronicles music sucks on the DS. Well, it's on the DS. What did you expect? Allow me to show you these games on the DS.
It's the same kind of flat argument that says that bad CGI makes it quote-unquote look like a PS3 game. Again, it says nothing and everything at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yes, bad CGI is a thing. That does not mean that all the effects are automatically
Also,
bad.
just to mention as well, the bad shaky cam doesn't certainly help. Like, it's a good thing I'm not really prone to seizures because...
Can the four of us all agree that this stupid thing that was going on in the late 2000s, both in games and in movies, in Hollywood, in action movies, the stupid abundance of fucking shaky cam, it's a good thing that it fucking died?
Yeah.
But don't you see, Pedro, that's realism, quote-unquote.
Yes, realism in a game about fighting aliens.
Like, but that's the thing. No, I agree with you, Taylor. But it's honestly, for me, one of the you said about the whole argument of the CGI looking like a PS3 controller. No, that's the thing. I recently showed Veggie Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch. You know,
Oh boy.
and he was bored out of his freaking mind with that movie. And the fun thing, I was just like, every time there was one of the dream sequences with the action stuff, me and Veggie were just constantly going, you know what?
Hold on. Sorry. Just a second. Notice my elbow. I'm close to destroying the panel bar.
Yes.
Yes.
And they one-shot me.
Oh, come on! That is beyond cheap. Hale.
And yes, it does mean I had to start from the beginning, but fuck that. Let's cut to the end.
Also, I love how they have the gold to have the woman shout, "We're waiting for you, Hale!"
Because that's supposed to be the phrase that's triggered before the ending starts.
Yeah.
I think Cartman said everything I needed to say.
All right, so I guess we've
How
saved
will
the
Nathan
day
Hale get out of this one, though?
by running
Very stoically.
and running.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Running Man 2. As in, he literally runs there. That's the only connection.
Hold this position. That's an order.
I guess that's her rank, I finally remember.
You said, "Arg." Okay.
Don't leave Hale behind.
It's unfortunately circumstances,
Which
because the
means,
explosions are too much, and this is, again, the narration did mention that,
that was the
the
last
captain
time
did
she
not...
saw Hale, yeah.
Yeah, so technically she doesn't even know what happened to him, technically.
Oh no,
I then
Hale!
demoted that pilot to janitor because he disobeyed my orders.
But yeah, it worked. Destroying the London Tower made essentially a chain of reaction that had the Chimeran army, specifically in the UK, collapse. So it seems to be working out. It's not a complete win against, in the entire world, but it's a good start.
At least in Britain, the Chimera were defeated.
Hang on, guys. The top left of Wales. Anglesea's not literally that close to Wales.
Well, I guess to be fair, they are using an older
if a
map.
flubbing in Spider-Man 2 is anything to go by, Dweebs, I get the idea Insomniac is not great in geography.
I mean, it's better than that Welcome to Wrexham Disney documentary where they get cities on completely the wrong ends of the country.
Also, yes, we bothered to specifically mention that, they did found women and children, so humanity does have a chance to, start again from the UK. But Hale, presumably, has not yet been found.
Let's salute Nathan Hale, who made the supreme sacrifice.
This does feel like a bit of a weird decision to do for a franchise who, again, future they didn't know was concrete or not, because if that was the end, there you go. Your new protagonist is probably dead.
That being said,
I mean,
Well.
you never really heard his voice in the first place.
That being said, there is a post-credit scene, so try to keep an eye out where the credits roll. But I guess it's a good time to still have some final thoughts in the meantime. Again, we will have an extra part, an extras, in the next part to see like stuff like the concept arts or the data log stuff, But might as well start hearing about some of the final thoughts. Waves.
This was definitely one of the video games of all time. Its plot, it has a plot, it exists. It has people masquerading as characters.
What do you think, Dweebs, as a good, jolly good old representation of your home country?
I've seen worse.
Like in Layton.
I mean, it's more accurate than Professor Layton.
The sheer
Again,
misery and destruction.
it's a much more boring London.
Like you said at the beginning, the true, British experience without the risk of getting stabbed in the streets.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what they should do after New World of Steam. Make a new Professor Layton game, but have it set in a London. Okay. If you have to explain why Layton isn't in his version of London, just have him sent to an alternate universe where he ends up in a more realistic London.
But
And Mark
remember,
Cerny was heavily involved with this too.
but remember, Dwibs, the New Lane game takes place in America.
Yeah, that's why he's saying. That's why he said after the New World of Steam. No, Dwibs, remember, this is Layton's. So, and we're going back to the style of the original trilogy now, which means that he's going to start off the game in what seems to be a more realistic London, but turns out that's a fake London, and we need to get back to the real London.
You see, guys.
Also, if you notice, like you mentioned previously, you notice in the credit there was a dialect coach. So they literally had someone for the voice direction who actually coach everyone else to do a convincing British accent, which is a good following question, Waves. But first, let Joe Impero finish the joke.
You see, the real twist is going to be that Layton thinks he's in America, but in actuality, he's only in Canada.
Ye gods!
Ye gods!
And the telltale sign that he notices to realise he's actually in Canada.
Affordable healthcare.
Either that, or either that, or someone forgot to rub the maple syrup from their face.
So again, Vives, this is my following question. Again, I don't know how much attention you paid to the voice acting, but what do you think of the British accent that these Americans had to pull for the game?
Well, I never cringed when they were doing it, so I guess it passes the test.
So I guess the dialect coach actually did a good enough job to actually give out good masquerade.
Yes, he did the best job for anyone in the whole game.
It's funny because I remember distinctly there was also one that Jeanne d'Arc had in order for the voice actors, also Americans, to have a French accent. So this is not unprecedented for Sony to hire a figure for this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice they went that extra step.
Anything else?
Well, what about the actual gameplay? Like, I don't know even how much. Okay, you played Red Faction, okay, but in general, how much are you familiar with shooters?
Somewhat. I remember. I think I played a little bit of. I don't know if I actually played Rogue Warrior or.
You'd say that you wanted to, but never actually, ended up doing it. I did play it, unfortunately, and I recorded that.
As for the gameplay of this game, it's a shooter game. What's next?
Let me put it this way, Dweebs. If the difficulty wasn't this ball-busting, would you be interested in actually playing it on your own?
Nah, not really.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, this looks like almost every other shooter game that's ever come out ever.
Mm-hmm. Okay then. Well, yeah, I guess we were talking about this in this very part, but what about the music?
There's music?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, because from what I understand, David Bergeron mainly only really, aside from this one, he only ever really does more light-hearted games, for lack of a better term, and him trying to be more darker with his score here. I think it went about as well as when Christoph Beck tried to do that for Edge of Tomorrow. not that well.
It's not quite. I'm guessing you're saying it's not quite how successfully John Ottman went from doing X-Men to doing Astro Boy and doing it with flying colors.
Yeah, because I mean, okay, I'm not saying composers can't, are forbidden or anything from trying something out of their wheelhouse. But it's clear some are better at it than others.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
And David in this case isn't really. I don't think he's really that up to it. Although then again, to be fair, in terms of the history of Insomniac game composers, Stuart Copeland tried to do that at one point when he did the music for the Alone in the Dark game in 2001, I think it was.
Oh, so it was New Nightmare, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and imagine trying to have the Spyro style and that kind of.
Sometimes they're just weird, the placement, and sometimes it works, but other times it sadly doesn't.
Yeah. Anything else I can mention? I mean, the graphics.
Yeah,
Okay.
this was in the very beginning launch window of the console, and as Pedro mentioned, there is a lot of VSync problems in this. But like I said, for the most part, the game actually holds well the frame rate. But what about the actual art style and graphical component?
Well, honestly, one thing I've never really liked about this generation of games was how, for lack of a better term, muddy a lot of them looked.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone, I don't know, for some reason it feels like someone put like an extremely thin layer of Vaseline over some of the graphics to hide how, well, not quite there yet HD games were at that time.
Okay then.
And as for the art style itself, historical survey maps used with permission from I mean that church would beg to differ, but
I'd like to extend to the following groups and individuals. Okay, God lives in the meantime.
Honestly, yeah. As for the actual art style, it fits Britain, but I mean that's it.
Keep in mind, like I said, one reason I'm asking because stuff will slightly change already in the next game, and even more so in 3. So keep that in mind, how this actually looked like. Also, special thanks to Ken Kutaragi, Akira Sato, and Phil Harrison.
It does seem like it is very well best to judge this franchise game by game, which probably should be the norm anyway.
Hi, Jim Ryan.
Wow, some interesting
Shueyo
shows up.
Shida.
It's like a third of a villain's rogues gallery. Yeah, moderators of the forum. Again, Insomniac has always been a bunch of good sports in interacting with the fans, so it's actually pretty cool.
Thanks to our pets.
Yes.
Yeah.
No mutagenic bloodthirsty freedom eating aliens coach were harming the making of this game.
Oh, well,
Cute.
thank goodness.
So,
I don't know how I would have coped.
according to the British intelligence and the report of the American, Nathan Hale was actually dead in the collapsing of the tower. But was he really?
Oh.
Well, there he
Sure,
is.
he doesn't.
Bastards left me behind.
He looks a bit worse for wear, but
Hey! I guess they didn't... Wait, no, I guess they did see him? Huh.
Where is he now? The Scottish mountains.
well, I guess at the outskirts of London.
Let me tell you about the Avengers Initiative.
Yeah, basically, these people are here to actually invite him to a team. And don't worry, it's not really too much of a spoiler because this sequel will immediately start with this scene too.
But he's got a grenade. Is he gonna blow himself up?
He probably doesn't trust people, but
Just a bit of a precaution.
People don't understand me.
And
Fine.
I guess he decides he can trust them.
again, we will see technically how it leads because this is basically your sequel teaser to it. Like, how does this actually relate to everything?
I wonder what other factions there could be that want the
Well, like you said, the
legendary
Chimeras
hero.
were repelled in Britain, but not from the rest of the world. So For the struggle against the game continues, your heroic efforts have saved countless lives. Your memory will be honored for years to come. I'm sure they will.
Now press the
Yes,
start button.
about that. Yeah, now press the start button to, I don't know, blow the PS3 up.
Anyway, I guess that's it, Dweebs, I suppose.
Yeah. Resistance Fall of Man is a shooter game that came out.
Alright then, Pedro.
Well, again, the game looks like it's perfectly serviceable for what it is. It's just not particularly engaging or interesting from what I'm seeing here. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything remotely different from what all the other games of this genre already did before and were doing at the same time. I'm gonna have to say that Microsoft won this one with Gears of War 1.
And Halo.
To be fair,
Oh wait,
both
Halo
games
wasn't
came out
out yet, was
literally
it?
the same day in America, so they were in direct
Oh,
competition.
yeah. Gears
Halo
1.
started a generation before, too. There was
Yeah.
that, too.
I mentioned Gears of War 1 because it literally came out on the same day in America.
And
So-
yeah, like, even without my preference to third-person games, no, Gears wins easily.
This, on the other hand, doesn't really feel like it's doing really anything particularly to stand out. It just feels like, I understand that they wanted to do something different than what they usually do, but it doesn't feel like they had much of a vision for how they were going to do this. It feels like they just created a checklist and they ticked all the boxes for it, and that's it. That's basically it. It's a very checklist type of FPS game for the time that it came out. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything remotely unique that makes it stand out from the pack. Not really. So it does feel a bit weird to hear Ted Price say, "Oh, we wanted to experiment, do something completely different." Yeah, I get from your own catalog, I guess, but in terms of making an FPS game, you could have done something much more unique than this, because it feels like, again, you just ticked a bunch of boxes off a checklist for what was popular in the genre at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big problem. I feel like that statement from Ted Price that they genuinely just wanted to make something unique and interesting, different from everything they've made before, does fall a bit flat for me, because this game doesn't really seem to have any kind of unique vision to it. It feels like, okay, let's make an FPS game that looks dark and gritty, and we're fighting zombie-like things throughout the entire game, and we have super stoic characters, and that's it, really. It's not like Gears of War 1 stood out thanks to its gore and its horror elements. While this game technically does have gore, it's definitely not really a focus or anything of part of like some kind of it just feels like a very, very average and very uninspired FPS game for me. I mean, I get that I'm not an FPS guy, so obviously I'm probably not the best person to talk about this, I guess, but I don't know. I enjoy Halo more than this. I can tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I see. Here's the thing. Unlike a lot of people, I don't mind developers trying to get out of their comfort zone. Like, I don't mind. Like, for example, when Naughty Dog abandoned cartoony platforms and started making Uncharted, I was perfectly okay with that. Developers should not be forced to just do the one thing they're famous for forever and never be allowed to do anything else. So I appreciate Ted Price wanting to branch off and not just be known as the Ratchet studio forever and ever, because at the time that was the primary thing they were known for, right? That and Spyro. So I kind of understand that they didn't want to just be forever tagged as the Ratchet studio. This, unlike Uncharted 1, where Amy Hennig definitely had a vision for what she wanted to do with that franchise, it doesn't feel. I don't get the same from this game. Like it feels not. It's not just that it doesn't feel Insomniac. It doesn't feel like the game has any kind of unique identity of its own.
It's
Everything
like
that I'm seeing here feels like it just came from every other FPS I've ever seen of this ilk. Go on.
If I recall correctly, wasn't this sort of kind of on the forefront of the FPS genre? That's not excusing its lacking flaws here, but if it's like one of the earlier FPSs of the 7th generation of gaming, then I wonder if that might be why it is the way it is. But part
Not
of the
really.
reason...
Even if it was, it's not really, because this is where I can make instead a comparison. 2006 was the year also where the first Prey actually was released. And let me tell you, it's a much better type of FPS with alien weaponry, with a much more, not necessarily complex, but more intimate and, well-developed story with a bunch of characters involved in it, involving, also aliens invading the world in that kind of sense. So yeah, and compared to this, it technically is much more better on that front. So no, Jova, it's literally something that came out the same year. But again, possibly even better than Gears in my eyes.
In that case, I really have to chalk a lot of the problems up to potential growing pains Insomniac were having trying to break into a completely new genre.
Yeah. Because it does feel a bit like it feels like a very checklist type of game, because like, for example, if they really wanted to do this, they should have done one of two things: either have a more properly fleshed out story with proper characters, or go super over the top and just make the game super crazy over the top to the point where it's just so very bombastic and rely purely on visceral thrills and stuff like that, But it doesn't do that either. Like, the game takes itself very seriously, super duper seriously, and it's just like, as a result, it just doesn't really do much for me. Like, the music is whatever, it's fine, I guess. The visuals, it looks like it looks like a generic FPS. I just don't really get much out of these visuals.
I do wonder if it was something that at the time, when the mindset was in, it seemed a lot cooler, but obviously hasn't aged gracefully.
That's the thing, Java. Even back in 2006, I wasn't exactly into these kinds of games either. So
I'm just trying to get into the mindset of the average gamer as to how this may have been as successful. Okay, I'm not sure if Teo's gone... Well, okay, we know that it was apparently successful enough to get 2 more games, I guess.
Remember, Jova, this was the actual game that carried over the PS3 in its initial period.
I'm wondering if the multiplayer really broke its back carrying things.
Which actually is a good thing to mention. We were mentioning about, some of the previous parts about, FPSs, maintaining potentially, how much of an identity they do have without the multiplayer. Just recently, Helldivers 2 came out. That one is just a simple premise and almost no single player content whatsoever. And yet it's surprisingly working out very well. Even I am actually surprised how it's doing. So
Helldivers 2 so far is the big surprise of 2024.
So it's more of a case, Jova, of things people live in the moment, or kind of anything.
It could be. Also, keep in mind that Helldivers 2 is working well with its multiplayer. That does lead me to wonder what'll happen when either the multiplayer dies down or, well, the servers.
Well, it just like what happened with anything else, we've forgotten, but that's not really the important part. That's what I mean.
Fair point.
I mean, it's one of the... even Nintendo has something like Splatoon, which is clearly very multiplayer driven.
And by the time we're recording this, it literally just shut down.
Yeah.
Wait, it did? I thought they were recently just doing
the first one.
Oh, the
because
first one.
The Wii U and 3DS servers, by the time recordings, have very recently been shut down.
So now you can play online on both 3DS and Wii U. You can download the games. You can't everything regarding online on the Wii U and the 3DS is now officially dead, and I do mean everything. You can't even re-download your bought games or anything like that. I think the only thing you can do is go to the internet browser and browse the internet, but who the hell does that on a console? So, no, it's what Theo said. Like that. No, the thing is with Helldivers 2, they got, like, from what I've heard, like, people who say that it captures the fun of the multiplayer of these kinds of shooters, like the shooters from this particular era. That kind of multiplayer fun.
It's kind, although it's apparently well, obviously a different genre. When it comes to that kind of vibe, it resembles a bit more how Killzone's multiplayer was rather than this one.
Yeah.
So there is
This
that.
one, maybe the multiplayer was definitely more the proper appealing aspect of it, but it's dead now. So,
I suppose to give Helldivers 2 credit, it's not a full price game, at least not on Steam. So at the very least,
it's not on PS5 as well. Sony released it's a more on the low budget type of fare.
That's because I get the idea they were not really expecting it to blow up the way it did.
I will say this,
I'm pretty sure when we get an Helldivers free, it's probably going to be a full price. But however, to be fair, it will probably also have a bigger budget as well. So,
but regardless, though, Helldivers 2 knows what it is and how it wants to live in the moment. I guess my pet peeve with FPSs was just how much they relied on the multiplayer to the point where it came as an obvious detriment to the single player, despite them trying to pretend, oh, no, the single player is absolutely going to hold up, guys. Swear on me, Mom.
Sure. It's one of those things where the problem with a game like this is that you can tell that the developers were thinking a lot in the moment and didn't think about longevity. Because, once the servers go down, all you're left with is the campaign, and the campaign is not exactly super duper awesome.
And keep in mind, we can't even really judge the multiplayer because, well, you can't really play it without the servers, so.
I mean, if you're playing it on RPCS free, fans of course took matters into their own hands and created their own servers. Problem is, from what I've looked into on RPCS free Wikia, you need a really super special beefy PC to emulate these games to
which for a 2006 game, it's not really a good look.
Well, it's important to remember that it also emulation is not an exact science. It depends on it's a very case by case basis.
Oh no, like I said, it's more of a case of it's a testament on how bizarre the coding of the console actually was at the time.
Hell, I can bring up the third Neptunian Victory, which you'd think, considering its PS2 level assets, would be very easy to emulate. But apparently, and according to the RPCS3 people, those games have such spaghetti code that it's very unstable to get those things running without some crashing. And Victory right now does not work. You'd think it would, considering how low assets it is, but and to be fair, the first two do, but I guess Victory's code is even spaghettier than the other two.
Mamma mia.
So it kind of becomes a problem. Like when if you go back to something like the first Gears and the first Uncharted, which came out around this time as well. Those games still are perfectly enjoyable thanks to their again, the strong characters in Gears that and a script that doesn't take itself too seriously. Same thing with Uncharted, where again the plot is not exactly high art, but again the game benefits from a writing that doesn't take itself seriously. It's just goofy fun. The classic, adventure, a serial from the 40s type of formula, where the hero rescues the girl and shit like that. You know how it is. So. Those games can still rely on their single-player campaign because they're enjoyable even to this day. Obviously, when you take a look at the first Gears and the first Uncharted compared to the sequels, they do have that first installment weirdness aspect to it, but that's something that's perfectly understandable, in my opinion. So, whatever. Not to mention considering the growing pains that were going on at the time, like Jova said. This game, on the other hand, I don't think this game was as lucky. The campaign is not exactly compelling to carry the whole game, and like Theo said, this was a fully priced game at the time, which was $60. So I mean, obviously nowadays, like Theo said, you can literally get this thing for like $10 probably if you know where to look. So it's not like you're going to be spending much money for it, but at the same time, a game has to be both worth my money and also worth my time, especially worth my time. And I don't think, this is definitely a game that I'm not particularly going to care about playing. I did try to. Oh yeah, might as well a correction from the last part. It turns out that playthrough I found in the previous part turns out it's a Brazilian playthrough. I still have yet to find proper footage of the Portuguese dub of the second game. I'm not entirely curious enough to get the game myself, even pirated, just to check the dub. So I think I'll just let it be. It's probably not particularly interesting to talk about anyway. I doubt they got any particular notable actors for this. So yeah, Resistance. I'm sure it's a perfectly serviceable FPS gameplay-wise, but everything outside of that feels very average to just plain boring to me. It's just, maybe the sequels will be better. Hopefully the sequels will improve upon things, because this first one, unlike Uncharted 1 and Gears 1, it definitely doesn't seem like it stood the test of time for me. Go on.
Resistance Fall of Man is an interesting look back into the era where FPS games ruled the gaming world in pretty much almost every sense. Like, they were the big money makers, and as a result, companies were kind of pushed to have them. Which, again, is part of the inkling I get. Like, sure, there are interviews that say that, Insomniac did want to try something new. I can believe that. I can also believe that Sony may have firmly asked them, hey guys, make us a new FPS. Okay, thanks. We'll see it in a few years. And again, I'm not saying...
Killzone 2 is taking longer than expected, so can you maybe do one?
Yeah, it's like... And look, that does not mean it had to be bad, but I do constantly get the feeling with this game that their hearts were not 100% into it. Heck, maybe 80%, but not 100. I mean, like, it feels like at times they're moving towards a great idea, but then shy away from it because they didn't want to waste too much time on this game, essentially, in the sense that, it might be big or take away time from stuff that they were more interested in. The story is... well, there's no way to get around it. Pretty bare bones. Like, it's a typical, you're the random hero of the day. Go save it. And you do. You're supposedly dead, but you're not. And now, please join the Avengers Initiative, essentially. See you in the next game. And that's pretty much all there is.
Actually, Joe, but this is Sony, so maybe he'll join the Sony
The Sinister Six.
The Sinister Six, the Spider-Verse. Nathan Hale, his name is Nathan Hale, right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Nathan Hale shows up in Venom 3.
Brilliant. I mean, but there really is just not much to dissect with the story, which I do think is a shame because the premise does seem interesting. It's not even aliens are invading World War II. It's more like, hey, World War II never happened because aliens attacked, so we had to get our crap together and work together to fight against them. Hence also the falling of the Soviet Union. Oh, woe is me. But, aside from an interesting premise, it doesn't feel like they do as much as they could with it. And, now, to be fair, it's the first game of the franchise, so I am not going to condemn the franchise based off of this first game. That being said, if anyone was, alienated from the franchise based off of this first installment, I wouldn't blame them. Now, obligatory, I do have to say, disclaimer, we have not seen the multiplayer. For all we know, maybe the multiplayer was incredible enough to draw in the numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happened. That's how a lot of FPSs, even of lesser quality, drew in the crowds, essentially. But again, I feel like lacking in stuff other than the multiplayer is, in the long run, heck, arguably even when the FPS genre was in its heyday, lacking in other categories was ultimately going to hurt things overall, which, again, I haven't seen all 3 games, but I do wonder if this is one piece of the puzzle as to why this series does not have the most glowing reputation these days. But, okay, ignoring that, the gameplay itself is your typical FPS shooter vibe here. The problem is the inane difficulty spikes. Like, you can't really get that many hits. And you know what? Okay, you know what? This feels fine for, like, a hard mode or something. But no, by default, the game is kind of unforgiving. Not gonna lie, from what Tio has told us, from what I've observed in that
Like I said, only the third game technically, doesn't bite you that much, and towards the end of that, it still retains all the brutal difficulty. Let me put it this way: someone who not necessarily grew up but has become more accustomed to difficulty options and general type of curve that has been happening in these past 5 to 10 years, is in for a very rude awakening if they start playing this. Instead.
And speaking of that in that regard, the fact that this was directly competing with Gears of War, even if this game had a great multiplayer, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Gears of War absolutely curb stomps it in, if not multiplayer, because again, haven't seen this game's multiplayer, so can't judge entirely. I have seen Gears' multiplayer, that's a pretty good multiplayer, but let's look at the single-player content still. Gears, better story, more character interaction, arguably better balancing of difficulty as well. The weapons, let's be fair and say, both games have their keen weapons overall, but it's just that...
Okay, aside from the Lancer, I don't really remember any particular weapon that stands out in Gears.
Admittedly, the Lancer is kind of the main point of the game, but, like, I guess you could argue there are more weapons of variety in Resistance, so I can give you that, but as for how fun each game feels, I'd have to give that to Gears, which I do feel is probably the main thing that holds back this game for me, is that it does not seem that much fun to play. Not bad, per se. No, it seems like, the standards of the time, but it doesn't feel particularly that fun. Like, the first time you get to pilot an alien tank of, 2 times total, it's, over in less than a minute if you know what you're doing, which is weird design. And like Tio also mentioned, you get better weapons, but then the game balances it out with enemies tanking more hits or having the weapons of their own, instead of letting you at least getting some chance to spread your wings with these more powerful weapons first. A lot of it feels like early installment weirdness, especially given out the fact that, again, I'm going to go out on a limb here, it really feels like Insomniac were having troubles figuring out how to get into this genre of gaming, given how, to my knowledge, they had not done an FPS before this point.
No, like I said, they had done one before Spyro, but I don't know how that one actually plays out.
And if, the team members who worked on that were still around at that
it was
point.
the first game of the company, so probably Ted Price was there.
Huh. Still, like you mentioned, that is a while ago, but... Okay, so the gameplay is nothing to write home about. Sadly, neither is the soundtrack. Again, I feel like they were going for atmospheric a little too much. We could have used a lot more energy because, I won't sugarcoat it, sometimes I get flat out bored by the score in this game. Which is a shame because, again, there was potential. Lots of potential. I don't know if I want to call this game entirely wasted potential, but I will say I got that inkling way too many times for comfort. So, if I were to get into the Resistance franchise, I probably would see myself skipping the first game. I mean, unless there's...
Let me give you a piece of advice already in advance, Jova. Not to say that it's downloaded for you or something, but you're probably having a better time finding an essay on YouTube that tells you stuff. Oh. And my suggestion is don't spoil yourself on Weber, because some of the surprises are worth a first reaction.
Oh, don't worry. I will keep myself nice and unspoiled for our commentaries. But, that was Resistance Fall of Man. It was certainly a game made at that time, and dear Lord does it show. It's great as a time capsule to remind you of what things were like at the time. For much else, not so much. Tio, close us out with your thoughts.
Yeah, this is still rough, and I'm gonna say the weakest in terms of strictly gameplay for the original trilogy. Mostly because of the presentation and the more brutal kind of difficulty. But overall, it's fine for what it wants to be. Simply on the fact that it's technically still a technically competent FPS. The problem is starting in regards to the fact that it was heavily priced, advertised, and yes, like we said, maybe the multiplayer was there to compensate for those efficiency. I guess you can make an argument of that, but for someone who just didn't care and maybe wanted to see actually what the game was about. $60 for this kind of experience are still too much. But I could argue, stuff from Insomniac still shines through. Notably, like you said, the weapon variety design and actually adhering to still, the old canons of the FPS, the shooter genre. Because let me tell you, when it comes, yes, Gears technically has a better story characters. So if you actually look forward to that, definitely play that. And probably still will play that technically if I had to choose between these two. But this one actually lets me actually keep all my weapons, and actually has an interesting variety. While instead Gears, I technically forgot, you mentioned previously. I guess you can maybe count the Hammer of Dawn as another major iconic weapon, but it's an orbital cannon. It feels like I'm cheating if I actually count it as an actual weapon that you fire.
But the Hammer is usually reserved for only specific moments in the story anyway.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Yeah, it's situational and not scripted, but very situational for, rather than potentially be actually useful. But again, strictly just for the gameplay alone, I get it also about the stuff, what he just said about also the story. And again, if this is really the aspect that you're looking forward to, storing characters, yes, this is not definitely the better choice. But I'll still also play this over the first Uncharted on the virtue that the gunplay is much more fun. I'm sorry, I really get bored by the lack of weapon variety and the fact of, the cover shooters and the enemy types. At the very least in this, I have, more visual stimulation despite the fact that it's a brown fest. And at the very least, that will actually be fixed in the future games. With its own set of kind of worms because nobody can get nice things, I suppose.
I am really intrigued to see where that goes with all the foreshadowing.
Well, we're not just yet, but let me conclude. Like I said at the very beginning, the best information that I can give you this is that I don't really hate this. I don't think it's the greatest thing ever, but I don't think I actually hate it. But I'm just glad Insomniac actually was still making, Ratchet and Clank games aside from this, because if this was the only thing they did, I would be much less charitable towards it. Sorry.
Yeah.
That being said, we're not technically done with the game, because the next part will be technically the last, since we actually get to see all the collectible stuff that we see, including some minor Easter eggs tied to it. So see you for that.
Sounds like fun. See you then.